All right, hey, good morning. What's up, my friends? This is your boy Turgon the Wise coming at you with a new video today. What are we talking about today? Well, we're going to get back to the old structured format of my videos. I have a legitimate agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about the new Lord of the Rings Rings of Power television series on Amazon Prime. We're going to walk through some current events in server 109 here. We're in our sixth season, but for whatever reason, the game developers labeled this as a season 4 server. And we're going to talk through some Gil-Galad here as a strat buster. And I'll talk more through that in a little bit. So, without further ado, the Lord of the Rings of Power television series on Amazon Prime, I really like. I've been reading a lot of kind of hate mail, for lack of a better term, a lot of mean spirited comments about the show online and social media and whatnot. And I can see where some of this is based. There are a lot of very, very enthusiastic Tolkien, for lack of a better term, like experts. And if you deviate in any way from the lore, these people are going to jump down your throats like you have blasphemed. And I get that. I feel that, and there are parts of that resonate within me. If you go and you read the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, the books, and then you go and you watch the movies, there are some idiosyncrasies between the movies and the books, where the movies like fairly heavily deviate from the books. A couple examples of that are in the books. And if I'm spoiling anything for anyone, sorry. But yeah, in the books, when the Fellowship of the Ring leaves Rivendell, Aragorn takes Andoril with him. He has it the whole journey. He doesn't do any of that. I don't want that power crap. That's just some movie stuff that Peter Jackson concocted for whatever reason. Additionally, the Battle of Helm's Deep, Haldir does not show up there. There's no elves involved in that battle. Haldir doesn't die. Haldir is very much alive and well in the books, and they just decided to bring him in for the movie and kill him off for no apparent good reason. I know among a lot of Tolkien enthusiasts, that is not a well received change to the plot. So that's a couple examples of how, in the original movies, deviated from the books. Rings of Power, I mean, the Tolkien estate did not grant Amazon all the rights to things like the Silmarillion. And so in Rings of Power, it's really cool. You do get to glimpse upon the two trees in Valinor. You get a quick shot of Valinor in the first episode. You see a young child, Galadriel, with her brother, Finrod Felagund, who is an amazing elf and has lasting impact across Middle Earth long after his death. And that's really cool to see. And it's really a cool kind of element to bring to the forefront of the story. Um, However, there are inconsistencies in the books. When you read the books, Finrod is killed. He goes on the journey to retrieve a Silmaril with Beren because he pities Beren. After Thingol basically, he asks Thingol for his daughter Luthien's hand in marriage, and Thingol I guess, thinks it's such a joke that he's like, "Yeah, sure, you can marry my daughter. Just go and get me one of those Silmaril things there. No problem. I'll see you back here in about never." So there's a lot of pity for Beren, for accepting this task, this impossible task, and Finrod decides to go with him to help him out. and he and Sauron engage in kind of a duel of sorcery of some sorts. It's a little ambiguous in the books, but Sauron had the mastery, which makes sense because Sauron is a Maiar, similar to Gandalf, whereas Finrod is an elf. He is not one of these luminous beings. He is immortal, but he's not a Maiar. So, in terms of like power rankings, it makes sense that Sauron would win that. And so they get exposed and thrown into their dungeons, and Finrod sacrifices his life in order to save Beren from a werewolf, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm going off the top of my head. Whereas in the Rings of Power, it's kind of depicted that Finrod dies during some sort of big battle. It's not really specific. It's a little ambiguous. It implies that he died in a big battle, which is not true. But they say, you hear Galadriel say Sauron got to him first, which is true. So there's a little bit of some deviation there and some conflict and some ambiguity that's interesting. Some other things that are really interesting about the show. I mean, we know that Galadriel refused the call to go home. I thought it was cool how they went about bringing that into the storyline, because there's no specificity as to how she declines the call in any of the books that I've read. So I thought that was a nice touch. I think they're doing a nice job, all in all, kind of tying up some of these loose ends that were left loose by Tolkien, answering these questions. And I enjoy the show quite a bit. I think there's some other criticism that the show is moving too slow, that these episodes are boring. I don't understand any of that because I mean, people were complaining that the fourth episode was a yawner, and I think the fourth episode is really great. I think it flows really well. I think there's a nice balance between advancing the plot line and the tension and release of tension that is associated with that aspect of the story. Whereas there is also some good action scenes, some really cool slow mo scenes where Aramir and Theo are running from a giant pack of orcs and through a forest, and then they get through the forest, and then there's the light of the sun, and it kind of keeps the orcs at bay. And there's some really just really I like the music during all that. You listen to this music and you're like, oh god, someone's gonna die. What's gonna happen? Someone's gonna die. So I think the show is really well done. I think the acting is good. I think the story is good. Does it align perfectly with what Tolkien wrote in all the books? No, and it's not supposed to, people, because the Tolkien estate didn't give Amazon all the rights to do that. So I think that people who have that expectation that it should mirror everything that Tolkien wrote exactly have an unrealistic expectation. And I think people should really adjust their mindset for this show instead of being so adamantly critical towards what it's not. If you adjust your view and just appreciate it for what it is, I think you'll really enjoy it too. Those are my 2 cents regarding the Rings of Power. Check it out on Amazon Prime. New episodes come out every Friday. I can't wait for episode 5. We're halfway through the first season, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it's going to go, because I already, having read the books and knowing the lore, have an idea of what's going to happen, and that creates a tension within me because I don't particularly look forward to seeing Braveheart happen all over again with Celebrimbor, but how it all happens, how it all develops, all the things that lead up to those events, that's what is part of what is gripping me to this storyline. Amongst all the other things, the relationship between Elrond and Doran. Did anyone even know they had a relationship before this? I don't know. I don't know if it's written anywhere. I don't know if anyone else knew it. I don't know if the writers of the show just made it up. But it makes sense, and I like it. I think it's really cool. I think it's really well done in a lot of ways. So, at any rate, those are my thoughts on Rings of Power. I probably spent way too much time jibber jabbing about all that. Let's get into the game stuff. Current events, server 109. What the heck is going on this server? All right, well, let me try to give you kind of a 10,000 foot recap of how we've arrived at this place. The first week to 10 days of this season were strictly farming and land grabs, and a whole bunch of discussions happening in the background between all of the fellowship councils. Really, every faction is about 1.5 fellowships. Every faction really has two fellowships. It's just some of those factions actually have two active fellowships, and some of us really only have one and a half. For example, I play for Gondor. We have three fellowships. The third fellowship is like 12 people. They're active, they play, and they contribute, but they're small. And our second fellowship is not as active. So I would say between Fellowship 2 and Fellowship 3, we really have about, half a fellowship there in terms of activity. And our main fellowship has its own, set of issues in terms of activity. And I think that that is something that is experienced across the server in general. People have lives. Some people that play this game are college kids that can sit there and stare at their phone or their computer all day. Some of us are working professionals. Some of us have children that we need to take care of, houses, families. So, when you look across the spectrum of who is playing, I think there's diversity there, and that's a cool thing. Uh, Additionally, this is a global platform. There are people playing in Russia, there are people playing in the UK and all across Europe, there are people playing in America and all of the Americas. I'm not just limiting it to the United States, I'm saying the Americas, Canada, the US, South America. People all across the world play this game. I think probably about the only country I haven't seen yet, that off the top of my head, is I haven't seen too many folks from Australia playing this yet. But that may just because I haven't encountered them. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm sure they're out there. But at any rate, back to what I was talking about. So the first 10 days of the season were mostly posturing and chatting and probably a lot of scheming. I honestly thought that Erebor was going to get deaded by Gundabad and Variags, and was hoping that we could try to come up with some sort of an agreement to help them. But it turns out that Erebor is actually friends with Variag and Gundabad. So right now, if you're looking at this map, pretty much it's east versus west right now. There is nothing happening in the east, as you can see. All the action is in the west, where um, Gundabad and Variag obviously are have an alliance faction. They're the only two active evil factions on the server. And Erebor allied with Arnor, and Arnor has been reduced down to just this one territory up here, this region, North Downs. And Gondor has, we fought quite a bit against Variag in the beginning down here, and they have slowly eaten through all of our southern territories and continue to move that way. Although there are some indications they're coming up to assist Gundabad in the fight for Rivendell, as Gundabad has failed to take Rivendell for, I don't have a specific time frame off the top of my head, but I think it's been about a week they've been, trying to take Rivendell from Lothlorien and have been unable to do so. So, kudos to Loth. So essentially, what's happened in terms of the battles is it's, Erebor and Arnor allied with Gundabad and Variag versus Lyndon and Gondor, who have an alliance faction, and Lothlorien and Rohan, who have an alliance faction. And I mean, it's one of the more sparsely populated servers I've played on in 6 seasons in this game. Like I said, about one and a half, two at most fellowships per faction. That's really small. I mean, we were coming from a server in season 5, where every faction that was an active faction on the server had at least 3 fellowships. So the dynamics of this server are very different, because coming from a server where like you can give your all and deplete your barracks, and then another fellowship can come in and back you up while you replenish yourself. We don't have that in this server, and no one really does. There's not a lot of that. So it's really been, I think, a pretty good amount of parity across this server, and it'll be interesting to see which way it goes. Variag are very, very strong. Linden are very, very strong. Erebor seems very, very strong. Lothlorien and Rohan are hanging on. Of course, they have that disadvantage of being in the middle of the map and just getting, eroded from, excuse me, all sides. It's been a humdinger. Ah, I didn't notice that. It looks like Eregion now belongs to Erebor. I forget when that happened, but so yeah, that's what's kind of happening currently on this server. We're out here fighting. Arnor over here trying to move our way across the map if we can. We've got this evil stream that's kind of going this way, and we're kind of going this way. We'll see if it works out. We'll see if the strategy changes. The server is certainly very dynamic, so we really have no idea which way it's going to go. And there's still plenty of season left. We're in the 4th week of the season, and typically seasons go about 8 to 10 weeks. Although there certainly is a possibility this could be a 6-week season. If we complete all of the season missions in a quick amount of time, that could certainly be a possibility. And I wouldn't be opposed to that, to be honest. So let's talk about Strat Buster. So we're playing the Tactics Evolved campaign, and one of the things that really helped when we were fighting Arnor when we first came up here was that Arnor started leveraging one of the elite skills called Rise Up. I'll show you Rise Up. Give me a second here. I'll punch it up for you. Rise Up is an ability that is available. I haven't checked all of the units, but I know it's available on Cavaliers and on Sentinels. It is not an elite skill that is available on any dwarf units. And what it does, it's a little bit of a broken skill right now. It increases the commander and the army's damage dealt by 15% when it's 10 out of 10, as long as you have the army comprised of 3 different races. So you need 1 dwarf unit, 1 elf unit, and 1 manish unit. And you can stack these. So I'm sure I'm not giving anything away because I see people leveraging it already. But you can stack these. So let's say you're running a Gimli and you've got, let's say, 2,500 war rams on them. So there's your dwarven unit. And then you can throw 1 command of sentinels with Rise Up and 1 command of cavaliers with Rise Up. And that'll give Gimli and those war rams a 30% buff to their damage dealt. And that buff persists after the Sentinels and the Cavaliers die. So it's very, very potent. It's a very potent thing. I see people running it on Galadriels. I see people running it on Dwalins, all over the place. It's really strong. It's really broken. It's similar to what happened last season with shield training, where you could reduce the damage the army took by 15%. Or I think it was 20%. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But you could stack that as well. But they changed that. They nerfed that so that the buff disappears after the units die, which basically killed shield training. So no one even really uses shield training anymore that knows what they're doing. And they use this Rise Up. So recently I've discovered there's a really cool, fun way to counter the Rise Up, which is from my boy Gil-Galad here, and Gilly with heralds and keepers is the answer. Actually, I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I'll just show you. Yeah, they're taking all my stuff. Blah blah blah. I'll just show you a quick report here to kind of demonstrate what it is exactly I'm talking about. So you can see here, and this isn't the greatest report. I'm actually going to go to a little bit of an older report from last night because this one really exemplifies what it is I'm talking about. See how they have one dwarf unit, the Guardian, one command. They have got one unit of the Sentinels with the Rise Up. There's the Rise Up, 10 out of 10, 15% damage buff. And you can see the Guardian does not have it. He's using this. I don't know why he's using that, to be honest. And then 7,300 Guards of the Tower, which are pretty beefy units, beefy Manish units. And so what this combination does here is it just absolutely, you kill off these quickly in the beginning of the battle, and then the keepers go to work and just slaughter, because they have a buff when enemy has only one unit type, keeper damage dealt plus 50%. And also Heartseeker, follow up, 40% chance each round. It's, well, 50% when it's maxed out, and I'm working towards that now. It's massive, and you can see the results here. It just absolutely shredded this full army. I mean, granted, I do have a 2-level advantage on this particular commander, and I don't know, maybe he just didn't build this commander right. I mean, it looks pretty legit. Yeah, he didn't bother so much with this. I agree with that. I agree with this. This increases the commander damage quite a bit, gives him some heal, more commander damage. So this is a commander damage build right here. And the commander didn't do so much damage. And also you have to bear in mind that my Gil-Galad has some skills, that are going to stun the commander. 28.6% chance to stun the commander for 2 rounds. So if that procced, then that really assisted in the shredding of Aragorn, King of Men, in this particular battle. And the same thing may have occurred here. Now, this is a tougher example. The War Rams, 853 War Rams, is much more significant than one command, but there was only 47 of the Sentinels here. So it seems like this build really is working well, and I'm going to continue tinkering with it, see if I can find other ways. And then you got to make sure you get advantageous matchups. Unfortunately, I stuck my armies here thinking that they would be okay for a minute, and took my dogs outside and started making a pot of coffee, and came back 30 minutes later and all my shit was jacked. So that's what happened there. And that's part of the game, that happens, and there's no reason to be mad about it. That's on me. But I wanted to share that that keeper strat, because I think it's a good one, and it's a lot of fun, and I'm building some prestige, and you got to, like, in all things with this game, you got to make sure you choose your matchups wisely. And if you're not online to choose those matchups, then whatever matchups you get are the ones you have to live with, right? It's all part of the game. It's all for fun. I hope that you found this video insightful and fun, as opposed to my last video where I was cursing half the time. And let me know what you think. If you have any comments, feedback, suggestions in the comments, or feel free to reach out to me on Discord or in the game. I hope that the rest of your day treats you well, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.